Hey everyone, DJ Nubis here with you on the Meltdown Radio podcast with my co-host for today, Anthony Jordan from Movies and Gaming. Thank you for being here, sir. We are going to spotlight King Ghidorah out of the Kaiju Spotlight series I've been doing. And so I've been, just as I kind of told people before, I went through, selected a Kaiju, just kind of randomly picked people to do whatever one I felt like they might be more interested in doing or what I wanted to get their opinion about. So obviously we'll start with just like your first experience with King Ghidorah and how when you first saw him and what you thought of the creature itself.
Well, I don't even remember how old I was. I was getting a haircut. My mom told me about the movie and said, if you're good, we'll get the movie after the haircut. So I couldn't have been more than maybe 3-4 years old, and needless to say, that young, being exposed to Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, like, I was blown away.
Do you know which movie it was, or
Ghidorah, the three-headed monster?
Okay, so yeah, there's that one there. Yeah, I can't remember my very first one because obviously one of the first movies I saw was Mechagodzilla '74, and then I guess it would have to be Godzilla versus Gigan because that was kind of like next in line with the whole like theme park, and then with Ghidorah and Gigan being like teammates in that one. But go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say nothing.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, from what I've been reading about a little bit, Ghidorah was influenced by an 8-headed serpent in Japanese lore called Yamada no Orochi, which I think is also referenced in GMK at some point, where he's in that hibernation in the ground, and then was supposed to be fully matured into an 8-headed serpent when he got out, but because he didn't have a chance to finish his regeneration, he was only had the 3 heads. So that was kind of an interesting point
of view. He really got shortchanged in that movie. Yeah, we're gonna get into some of like the different style looks of Ghidorah and how he applies to different movies and whatnot. But also, most of the lore that deals with King Ghidorah has him as an alien species, even going into the MonsterVerse.
that's how they kind of like got his origin in that film as well as far as the story is concerned. So he's always been like this alien species that's either destroyed Venus and the civilizations there, or coming to Earth, and then of course get into battles with other kaiju like Godzilla and Rodan and them. So uh, let's see. So speaking of many forms, like so we did talk about GMK. You know, he was kind of like starts out on like all fours, kind of like what we saw in Rebirth of Mothra 3, which was actually referenced as Desigagor in that. I think I have a picture of that somewhere here. Yeah, so sort of like this, only he was still golden in GMK. And then later on, obviously, he, got back to his normal self in terms of how he looked. Uh, what is your opinion basically on like how he was introduced to fans and of course to the Godzilla world as he was?
I thought it was very like well done. At this point, Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan have all been established as powerhouses in their own right. We see all of them do a lot of destruction in their solo movies. The Mothra larva managed to beat Godzilla in the previous movie, and in this one, Godzilla and Rodan's fight is one big draw constantly. So they introduce Ghidorah, and he comes across as this threat that needs these three powerhouses have to come together to have a chance against beating him. So just off the bat, they couldn't have had a better way to introduce him and just establish him as a major threat.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's like a picture of a little bit of artwork of Yamada no Araki. And so, like,
I kind
kind of
of wonder
cool.
if he in GMK had he gotten the chance to mature into the full Orochi form, would he have like grown an extra set of legs?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know how that is because, like, well, I mean, I could only assume that he might have been sort of like if I can't remember which one it was exactly, but oh, I think it's either Jason and the Golden Fleece or it's Sinbad and the Golden Fleece. I can't remember which one, but there was like a Hydra in that one, but that one didn't really have legs. It was more of a serpent
Yeah.
with two tails and a little bit of wings or whatever it was, and then of course the 8 or 9 heads that it had. So
Have
I
you
only assumed that maybe Ghidorah probably would have been something like that. Although going by Japanese and how they were portraying him, he would have still probably had 2 legs and maybe the wings itself.
have you read about like how hard it was to be in the suit for Ghidorah?
Nah, I don't know much history on that part of it. I mean, I'm assuming you've got the guy in there and he's pretty much controlling the legs and the main head in the middle. So they probably had something else going on with the side heads, I assume.
The heads were wire controlled, and on the inside of the suit there was this bar he had to hold on to for support, and all he could do was walk around in it. The original actor to play King Ghidorah, he said it was the least satisfying of all the roles he did because most of his performance was just supporting the weight of the suit and walking. And he talked about how just the slightest misstep would cause the wires to tangle.
Yeah, it's crazy how they did all that stuff back in the day. I mean, I guess even for the guy that was in Angarius, like he's crawling around most of the time. So it's like,
I believe it was actually the same guy that was in the Anguirus suit in Godzilla Raids Again that was in the King Ghidorah suit.
lucky him.
And I think he was also in the Kong suit, which that was another hard role because the suit had to be sewn shut so he couldn't be fully extricated between takes.
Yeah, I guess he had to like kind of like leave himself inside the suit. It'd be too
Probably.
much effort to keep jumping in and out of there. So yeah, I noticed you've got your figurine there. I kind of got mine up here. I don't really know what one this is supposed to be A4, but I
It
don't think I
looks
ever
like
got.
it might be the Bandai 91 King Ghidorah.
Yeah, so
I,
yeah, more like
I got mine sitting on a water bottle for display.
water bottle. King of the water bottle.
It was a good way to get him in frame.
Yeah, I apologize to people that are viewing this. I was telling Anthony I've got the sun coming in on my door window, so trying my best to avoid it. It's following me. Uh, so yeah, we talked about, of course, there's many variations to his. Like, in fact, I think that's close to what I have. Um, got this here as well. But he also has a very interesting appearance, and again, he's got like he goes from the Kaiser in Final Wars, which I thought was really cool and a really neat approach to King Ghidorah, because then it obviously comes out of that Kaiser suit or whatever into like the four-legged Ghidorah, which again, I've never been a big fan of the four-legged ones, but either way, I still like the concept that they used. Did you ever have like a favorite look or appeal to what you saw of Ghidorah? Any favorite
The
ones?
Rebirth of Mothra 3. Because
Okay,
I
yeah,
feel like it took the 91 King Ghidorah and it like perfected the design and made him look more aggressive.
yeah. And then of course you have the this one. I don't think I really liked the movie all that much either. I mean, it has some good parts about it, but I really did not like the concept with the Dorats and Ghidorah. I always hated that aspect of it, but they
Yeah,
were trying different things and.
yeah, that was kind of a weird choice.
Mhm. So I talked about a little bit about where Gigan is usually like Ghidorah's sidekick, and most of the times outside of like the aliens who generally take them over. Uh, how do you feel about in terms of like when Ghidorah is teaming up? Who do you like the best that he can team up with?
Uh, First, probably Gigan.
Yeah, and
Gigan
that's
just
funny too because when it comes to the MonsterVerse, I kind of wish they did throw Gigan in there. Would have been kind of cool. Or if they're gonna do one down the road, kind of maybe introduce Gigan in that way. But of course, Ghidorah's gone unless they reintroduce him.
Gigan's kind of a great one that he could just pair well with anyone.
Yeah, and he kind of has with Megalon and stuff like that. So clearly, they both are from outer space and whatnot. So makes sense. Then there's also the switch that we have at one point where Ghidorah kind of goes from the main villain to hero or guardian of the earth in GMK. Uh, how do you feel about that aspect? So for me, like when it comes to Mecha Godzilla or in this case King Ghidorah, I've always seen them as enemies. I've never seen them as like saviors or protectors or anything. So how do you feel about that aspect and when they tried to make Ghidorah into like an Earth protector?
Well, Mecha Godzilla, I feel, can be interchangeable because with him, he's a machine. The real intent comes from the people controlling him. But with Ghidorah, he should always be a destroyer. I didn't like the Guardian monster take on him.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too. Like it never really made sense to me. And it's not that GMK is a bad movie because I got the poster and everything, but Uh, it's just when you grow up seeing Ghidorah being this like villain, and through most of his earlier movies, it's like all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, what? He's an Earth protector? What? Uh,
He was thrown in later in the process.
yeah, yeah, and that's unfortunate. Like I don't know what happened there with that, but because
Basically,
obviously I think
they thought Mothra and King Ghidorah would have been more marketable, so got we lost out on what would have been the better version of the movie.
yeah, I never understood that either, though, because people, especially kaiju fans, we appreciate all the monsters. I mean, you look at the professor; he talks about Varan all the time, and I think Varan was supposed to be one of the original Earth Guardians in that film too.
Paragon, Anguirus, and Varan.
Yeah, and I think that would have been good because Anguirus was certainly one of obviously it's Godzilla's one of Godzilla's friends, but he is outside of maybe raids again, and Garrus was more of like the friendliest of the kaiju, basically to humans. Even though he always gets fucked over, but
It would have
especially
been
when it comes to Ghidorah, Ghidorah always tends to like fuck him up a little bit.
it would have been great to see too, because he's one of the most tenacious too. No matter how much damage he gets, he'll just still keep going for the throat.
Yeah, yeah,
Almost like
definitely,
he's almost like the kaiju equivalent to a honey badger.
definitely, yeah, yeah, and that's what makes him great. And I know that Goji and I were when we did our little spotlight on him, pointed a lot of that out. Is where he's just very tenacious and keeps coming at you, and he doesn't stop even if he gets fucked up pretty hard. So this is probably one of the more funnier versions of him with the hairy lion mane or whatever was going on here. I
What
always thought
was
that was
that like from a documentary or something?
this one. No, I think it actually appeared. I just can't remember which one.
It
Uh,
could have been from when they used them in Zone Fighter.
Possibly, or I was thinking maybe destroy all monsters, but I don't remember because I
I don't
remember it
think
just.
we've seen him over any power lines in that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I don't know exactly where that still is taken from. They might have just done that on set somewhere. Looks kind of crazy though. Looks like he should have been plowing right into it. Plus, he looked a little bit smaller than the the line, so I don't know if that was supposed to be like a far back shot or what. And then, of course, we do have the MonsterVerse, which I thought did a really good job with him in that.
Yeah, they really hit it out of the park with that. Like just so many little details, even how his tails are kind of like rattlesnake rattles.
Yeah, yeah. The mannerisms is what makes King of Monsters so good, even with some of the other monsters, where you just each one has its own identity, and that's what you wanted when they did this. So I really like what they did with the MonsterVerse and Ghidorah. Like it just has its own thing. Even the heads had all their own identities, which is talked about a lot. Where the middle head is usually the one that's in charge, where the other two kind of are the ones that follow. We always make fun of the one called Kevin because he's an idiot. Yeah. Now, when it comes to Ghidorah and his basically his attack or weaponry, he's really got just one. I mean, obviously he can fly, create dust and stuff, sort of like Rodan in some ways, but he's not near as fast. He does have the energy beams, lightning charge. Uh, I thought I always liked that aspect about him. I did like how Toho in the earlier movies made it look definitely all chaotic. It wasn't just like even though in the MonsterVerse it's a little bit more focused, but in the Toho films it always seemed more chaotic, which I liked. Sort of like they can't really control it, and it's just where it's going wherever and destroying the shit out of everything. What are your feelings on that part of it? His weaponry.
This well, obviously they were kind of limited by what the suit could do. The wings, I think, were a great weapon. I love the gravity beams or whatever they are in different films, and how
Mhm.
in some of the later films they even turned his head into weapons, where you get, like in the 91 movie, you have that iconic shot where he's choking Godzilla out and Godzilla's foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's happened a couple times too, which was kind of cool. Where, in fact, I was thinking it's Monsterverse and Final Wars, where he bites into Godzilla and he's actually sucking energy out of him like a
Even like
vampire.
the Comic Con poster for King of the Monsters, they have him doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if they were to go forward with another movie, which to me personally, I've talked about before with Rodan and Mothra, where I'd like to see uh origin story films in the MonsterVerse of each one of those. I would like to see one of Ghidorah, even though I'll never get it, obviously. But uh what would you like to see, whether by the MonsterVerse or Toho? Would you like to see another King Ghidorah film?
Well, I'd love to see what King Ghidorah would look like if they're going to continue the -1 story. I'd love to see what King Ghidorah would have looked like to be redesigned to fit that aesthetic.
Yeah.
Or hypothetically, I would love to have seen what a King Ghidorah would have looked like to match the Shin Godzilla aesthetic.
Hmm. Now, would you change anything with like his arsenal of weaponry, or just keep it pretty much the same way?
I would keep it pretty much the same way, but what I would probably do is like the little points on his tail. I would make them more edged and more of a threat themselves. Like he could wrap around Godzilla and they would stab in.
Yeah, kind of like those flying serpents in Kong in Hollow Earth that he
Yeah,
was
the
fighting.
war bats.
Yeah. Let's see. Would you consider Ghidorah like Godzilla's fiercest enemy, or do you think Destroyer or some other creature is more above that?
Would say Ghidorah, because like Destroya, it's like very debatable because Godzilla's power was so inconsistent in that movie. It's really hard to kind of rank where Destroyer would fall. So yeah, I'd go with Ghidorah and maybe Mechagodzilla a close second.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that too. And that's actually a good point about the Destroyer and, with that movie because, you had Daddy Godzilla basically on meltdown, and Baby Godzilla just hasn't quite gotten there in terms of power. So like you did have that mismatch of neither one was really in good battle shape really to fight, even though Daddy Godzilla was basically ready just to blow at any time. But that's a good observation because I never really thought too much about that and how, because a lot of people say Destroyer was like the most strongest opponent he had, which Destroyer was very strong. But like I think that when we think about the ultimate villain that Godzilla faces, it's always kind of be King Ghidorah to me.
But
Uh,
they Toho knows that even to the extent when Final Wars was supposed to be the last one, Kaiser Ghidorah was his last opponent.
yeah, and they kind of stepped it up because like I remember watching the movie and like, is Ghidorah gonna be in this at all? Like I just never, and then I saw this Kaiser thing, like, well, this is new. And then when he started splitting the heads, I was like, oh, this is great. I like
I,
this. This is
I
cool.
wish we could get a good figure of Kaiser.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
have a new Bandai one out now, but the faces look terrible.
Yeah. I was telling Kevin, like, when we were talking about Kamanga, it's like, Kamanga has like one really good one out there, but I think it's either sold out or very hard to get or very expensive to get. And it's like,
I believe that was the X Plus was like the only good one he ever.
Yes. Yep.
And
That
it
is.
actually came with like the base with the mantis on it.
Yep. 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 That was the best one they had. And like I was like, I tried to find it. Nope. Let me see here. So when it comes to his legacy for Ghidorah, like how do you feel it's going to finally end, like in the long run, in terms of the history of Godzilla and the Kaiju universe and everything? Where do you think he's just going to end as far as his legacy, as far as Ghidorah is concerned?
Well, he's easily going to go down as one of the most significant kaiju in film history. Godzilla's arch enemy. To the extent it's like you think Batman, you think the Joker, you think Superman, Lex Luthor, and when you think Godzilla opponents, others come to mind, but most people, King Ghidorah is gonna jump to the top of the list, and that's solidified. It ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. Do you think, because I know one of the biggest debates about Ghidorah and like his battles with Godzilla, a lot of people say, well, Godzilla can't handle Ghidorah one on one. He's always got to have help. Do you believe that is the case, or do you think that it's just more of opportunity where he just happens to have like Mothra or Rodan or Angirius or whoever nearby to assist him? Do you think he can handle Ghidorah one on one?
Well, it depends on the universe. I mean, in 91, the 91 movie, not only did he handle Ghidorah one on one, but then he handled, even though it's kind of debatable because they destroyed the ship controlling it, so you can kind of leave that as a little debatable if you want, but then he also defeated Mecha King Ghidorah one on one.
Yeah.
But for about 98% of the time there, he always did win by some kind of third party factor, whether it be the Mothra power up, extra help. Granted, GMK King Ghidorah was kind of a joke, but I think it just depends on the universe and the circumstance.
Yeah, and even thinking about the MonsterVerse, that first, or I should say, second battle they had when after Ghidorah fights Rodan, it's about ready to attack the plane, and Godzilla comes up out of the water and takes him down and takes off one of the heads. I mean, you could have argued that Godzilla would have had the upper hand there had not been for the oxygen destroyer being thrown into the mix.
Michael
Uh,
Torrey had actually gone on record and I believe and stated that if it wasn't for the oxygen destroyer, Godzilla would have killed him there.
yeah,
I think the way he compared it was like a grizzly bear to a alligator. You get him on the ground, the grizzly bear's going to win, but if the alligator pulls the grizzly into the water, the gator's going to win.
yeah, Lake Placid style.
I think the one example, probably the one shining example of Godzilla couldn't have won without some kind of intervention, as terrible as it is, and I don't want to talk about it, is the anime movie because, like, he wasn't even beheld to the laws of physics in that movie.
Yeah, we're talking about the sort of like the serpent from the sky, just kind of like fall,
Yeah,
coming down. Yeah,
those three movies were horrible.
yeah. Some people still like them a lot though, which is kind of crazy to me. But I mean, like I love when they attempt animation. I think it's always fun. But Singular Point wasn't bad. I didn't mind that too much. They did some cool stuff with that, but yeah, I think overall, like just that particular series just didn't do it for me.
There were like a lot of crazy stipulations in that series, like they were told no monster fights.
Really,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I believe it was actually a Omni viewer video where he was talking about that.
I'm gonna have to try to find that because I didn't even know about that.
You just
They
look
ever
up.
say what? They ever say why?
I forget which one, but just look at the reviews he did of all three of them. I believe it's one of those he mentions it in.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have anything else you would like to say about King Ghidorah?
Hmm. Just absolute classic, iconic movie monster.
Yeah, I think that down the road, as far as his legacy, it's like he's very memorable, very formidable. Uh, Whether you think Godzilla can take him on one or not, it doesn't really matter. At the most times that he's fought, it's been pretty much a gang up on him,
Oh,
especially destroying
another
all monsters.
another cool thing with him in like the game Super Godzilla, which is Bagan's one and only appearance to this date, he
Yeah,
was actually brought to life with King Ghidorah cells in one of the scripts where he was supposed to be a movie. It was the same thing where it was like King Ghidorah DNA that was used on him. So he does kind of have a loose connection to Ghidorah himself.
and is that the one that was supposed to be in GMK? I can't remember.
No, not Bagan, that was Varan.
Where was Began supposed to be in, or was he just something that never made it?
His original appearance was supposed to be in Godzilla 84, which I'm glad because that's my favorite all time Godzilla as it is.
Yeah,
They tried to slip him in once in the Heisei films, but it didn't happen. He was also supposed to be in a standalone movie against Mothra, and it didn't happen. So they one time they really did use him was in the game Super Godzilla as the final boss.
yeah. Yeah, I have to kind of like get with you and talk about him a little bit at some point because I don't know much about that particular kaiju.
One of the biggest wasted potentials because he's interesting and they've even had like different like concepts for what he would be, but for one reason or another he always gets scrapped.
Hmm.
But I just like brought him up because some of the proposed scripts and even his one appearance, like he was connected to Ghidorah cells, so
Yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything coming up on your channel that people need to be aware of?
probably nothing till after January. I might get one Christmas movie review in. I don't know yet.
Do you know which one it's going to be if you do it?
I'm even undecided on what that would be. Maybe I could do the Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol, but I don't know.
That'd be kind of cool. I do like that one. It's been a while. You should do that one. You should get busy and do that one.
Or
No peer pressure or anything. So as for me, tomorrow at 1, I will be doing a cinematic synergy with Kevin Lambert of the Entertainment Headquarters as we review Split Second, starring Rutger Hauer. And then at 6 p.m. Eastern, I think, I'm pretty sure it's my time. I'll have to double check with Century. He's doing a review panel. I don't know who's all on it, but going to be covering Astro Monster. So we'll again see King Ghidorah in that film as well.
so
And then Saturday, sorry, go ahead.
so that's what he was wanting to do it for. He invited me, but I got a play practice tomorrow at 5:30.
Yeah, so I don't know how many people are going to be on that, but should be fun. Then Saturday, because Christmas is next week, Mr. Tony and Dead and I are doing my pick for Ghouls of Midnight, which is going to be the Grapes of Death. And we just got done doing Free Jack last night. So if you haven't checked out that video, people go check it out. It's a lot of fun to talk about that film. And yeah, so that's about it. So please like and subscribe to the channel. Go to Mr. Anthony over here and subscribe to his channel. Give him some love. See, give him some King Ghidorah love there. And if you have any comments about this, how's your feelings on King Ghidorah? Do you think he is? I know some people feel like Mechagodzilla is like the ultimate villain, but I think Mr. Anthony and I agree that King Ghidorah is really the pinnacle of villainous to Godzilla. So, anywho, thank you all again. Thank you, Anthony, for joining me today. And we will see you next time on the Military Radio Podcast. Adioso.